So the purpose of project management basics is to show you what you need to know as at a minimum level about project management. This could be that you are working as a Scrum Master and there is an ask to be able to do some project management related tasks. So this will help you with that. It may be that you wanted to learn a bit about project management because you are going to be a project coordinator, or you want to enhance your project management skills. So this series of videos is going to help you to understand the basics of project management. The objective of these series of videos is to understand at a very high level what is a project and what are some of the project phases that you need to be aware of. And what's very important is what is a triple constraint triangle. If you understand that, then you understand project management about projects, which could be software related, could be anything. If you understand triple constraint triangle, then you're going to be successful, because that is the key of project management. The difference between effort and duration is very confusing for many people. You will be able to understand that. And what are some of the project management methodologies? So there is the waterfall, traditional, and now we've been introduced to Agile and Scrum and Kanban, for example. What is the role of project manager and the managing of the projects? What is that needs to be, so that you know what are your roles, and when you are a project manager, you need to maintain your role and be within those boundaries if possible. What's important as you understand triple constraint triangle is that you understand what is a RAID log, and if you understand the RAID log, you will be able to manage the project in a very effective manner. Understanding and tracking the budget of a project is important, as well as understanding time and material, which is people charging a project, and for you to track the budget to make sure that you're not going to go over or under given budget that you have been allocated for the project. And at the finally is what kind of status reporting should be giving to the management who are interested or who are the stakeholders of the project. So this is the purpose of this series of videos, to give you the project management 101. So what is a project? If someone says to you, what is a project? And you're going to say, well, a project has a start date and an end date. And that is key. A project must have a start date, must have an end date. There is no such thing as it goes on forever. That's something else. And we'll talk about that in a minute. A project has a start date and has an end date. It may be 6 months, it could be 2 years. It's okay, but it must have an end date. It is a temporary effort. You're trying to build something. You're trying to build a software, an application, or you're trying to enhance an application. But whatever the case may be, you are working on it on a temporary basis, not an ongoing basis. And it has a specific goal or result. You're building a brand new application, or you're adding a new feature, or you're resolving bug fixes. Whatever it is, it has a specific goal and a result. So that is a definition of a project. If the project doesn't have a start date or an end date, it seems like it's an ongoing, then you need to remember that this is going to be a business as usual. When the project is being supported by production support, then the project is gone into BAU, business as usual. So once the project is finished, deployed in production, then the production team takes over and maintains the project to make sure that there are no bugs and etc. So that is the different definition of project. So what are the phases of the project? Well, what is a PDLC, Project Development Life Cycle? It is a set of phases that a project goes through, and we have 5 of these. Every project must go through initiation, i.e. the start of the project. It identifies the project's purpose. Like, what are you trying to build? Remember the definition of project? What is the purpose? What are you trying to achieve at the end of it? And who are the stakeholders? i.e. who are the people who have put the money in to this project to make it work, to see it successful? So these are called stakeholders. A project charter, which is like a document that outlines what exactly the project is going to do and what is going to be the objective. What would it be addressing if the project is successfully deployed. After the project initiation, you're going to start planning the project. Now you know what the project scope is. You're going to start breaking that scope into the work breakdown structure, or WBS, and you're going to come up with a detailed project plan. And then once that is identified or created, you will also try to ask the team for any risk they see in creating or building this project, so that you can execute that project plan as per the WBS, work breakdown structure. The team that you have identified, they start working on that project in the actual task that you have identified, and the project manager kind of facilitates, manages to make sure that the team stays consistent to the project plan as close as possible, and making sure that there are enough resources, all the environments are set up, and keeps the project on track. Once the project is being executed, then you need to monitor and control to make sure that you know how the project is doing and making sure it's according to plan. And you're always giving the update to the management to make sure that they are aware, and you're highlighting the issues or the risks that may come up. At the same time, the final phase of the project is obviously once the project is finished and deployed, you want to close it to make sure all the project budgets are closed, the issue logs are closed or completed, and everything is documented and everybody has been told that the project is finished. So these are the 5 phases of the project, and we're going to go through them one by one. So project initiation, like I said, the project charter is a document that includes what is the objective, what is the scope of this project, who are the people who are interested, who put the money in, and what are some of the constraints that you can see. Who are the stakeholders? You need to do analysis to understand that particular person who is interested in the project. You need to understand what kind of things are they looking for. Are they technical? So that you need to give them a technical answers. Are these very business oriented? You need to give them very business oriented answers. So you need to do some stakeholder analysis to understand who these stakeholders are. Once the project starts, you're going to start putting the BRD together, the business requirements document, which is the scope of the project. And this is what you go through with the team, creating this BRD. Now, this BRD could take up to 3 weeks, 6 weeks, could take 8 weeks. And it is important that you spend time on this BRD to make sure that it's fully documented and approved by the stakeholders before you start the work. What is seed funding? So say for example the project costs $1 million. You want to get seed funding, some money to start the project. That's called seed funding. So from the million, you could ask for $250,000 just to start and see how the project goes, and then you give the feedback to the stakeholders. And if they are happy with the progress, they will give you the remainder of the money. Project planning, you're going to obviously spend some time with the team now, understanding the project. Now you're going to break that down into activities. All those activities will be broken down into as a work breakdown structure. Put some milestones, when we think we can actually finish the development, when do you think we can start testing, etc. And then any dependencies. You want to make sure that there are no dependencies if possible. And if there are dependencies, you want to make sure that you keep an eye on those. If it's a different team, different department, if it's a third-party vendor, you want to make sure you work closely to make sure those dependencies are not going to jeopardize your progress of the project. Gantt chart is a way of showing in a bar form to show that which task is first, then the next task. So it's a way of showing the project at a high level in a graphical form, but that is normally done in Microsoft Project. And the critical path analysis, i.e. what is the critical path for the project, i.e. if you have 2 weeks to do something, and within that 2 weeks you've got 1 week of analysis, then the critical path will be 2 weeks. i.e. if it's done within 2 weeks, you've got some time on your hand. If it takes more than 2 weeks, it's going to fail, because that's a critical path. That's what we mean by that. So identifying those critical path kind of dependencies and the flow will help you where you got a bit of buffer to play with, and where you have no buffer, and therefore everything must finish on time. Resource planning, make sure you have a team of developers, testers, subject matter experts or SMEs from network, from security, and you want to make sure that the equipment is there and the environment has been set up properly. And you want to, as I said before, you want to work with the team and say, do you know off the top of your head if you see any risks to this project? And if there are, they will help you to write them down, and then you mitigate, i.e. what if that happens, what would you do? That's called the mitigation plan. And all that is captured in the RAID log. We have an application called online banking. That's a big task, but if you break it down into the login screen, the customer information, customer accounts, these are small work breakdown structures that you can work on, deliver and test. Once the project is planned and then you want to execute, you want to make sure that according to your plan, the project is moving The people who said they're going to take 10 days are taking 10 days. And you want to keep an eye out on the critical path analysis to make sure that within those critical paths, all the tasks are being delivered by the team. Now, if the project goes into red, which means it's in trouble, the action would be, how do you bring it back to green? How do you bring it back to normal? It's called plan to green, PTG. So you'll have to come up with a plan. That may mean you need to increase the timelines if the project is not enough time. It may mean you need more money. So anything like that, you will need to analysis and come back to the management or the stakeholders by saying, I need more money, I need more time. That's the way to get the project back to green, called PTG. Change management, if there's a change to the BRD, because remember you spent 6 weeks or whatever time to conclude the BRD, the business requirements document. If there's any change to that, you want a change request to make a change. You cannot deviate too much, because every time you deviate from the BRD, then you have to put a change request, CR. And that way mean more money, more time, because you're adding scope to the project that was agreed in the beginning. Or being executed, you want to make sure that it's monitored and controlled, making sure the project is on par, on track, and the performance is actually going according to the plan. You want to show some reports and dashboards to show the management, the stakeholders, the project's progress. And if you had any decisions made, any dependencies, you want to highlight that to the management so that they know this is the decision that they took, and not something down the line when everyone's finished, you wouldn't remember why you did that. So you need to make sure you document and have it approved. You also want to make sure that the testing is 100%, i.e. is quality. Not testing for the sake of testing, but testing, making sure that every feature works, and you test against vulnerabilities, security risks, all that. Once the project is successfully deployed in production, you have a warranty period. But at the same time, in that project closure stage, you want to make sure that you close the project, you finish the project project plan, and the budgeting is complete. Whatever money is left or owed, you make that happen, and you put all the logs in place, you put all the documentation in a central location, and you have the production support artifacts, documents given to them, giving them training so they can start supporting it. All that happens as part of the project closure. So these are the 5 phases of the project. So let's talk about triple constraint triangle. Why is it so important to understand this as part of project management? Each project is executed using a triple constraint triangle, meaning it has a scope, i.e. what exactly are you trying to achieve? What is the goal of the project? It has a timeline to say you have to finish within a certain time frame. It has a cost associated to that. So this triangle is so tightly coupled that if you make a change to the scope, you will need to make a change to the time and cost. So for example, someone says, oh, could you add another feature in your project? Then you're going to say, well, that's going to take me more time and therefore will take me more, I need more money. Otherwise, they could say, could you deliver your project in a shorter time? You're going to say, well, if that's the case, I need to reduce the scope, and therefore the cost will be obviously less or more depending on if I need more people to finish faster. So all that is tightly coupled. Touching one would also impact the other two. And the reason why these 3 are important is to deliver a quality end result of the project. So let's take example of what is a triple constraint. Say you're a project manager or a Scrum Master, and the stakeholder or your manager says, could you go faster by doing the whole thing in instead of 6 months, do that in say 3 months, half the time. Well, you're going to say, if that's the case, I may need to reduce the scope in terms of what I can deliver, what was promised before. I need to reduce, because if I was to go faster, I cannot deliver the whole scope. So I need to take something out, and it may mean more money because I may need more people to do that. What if they say, could you add a feature that wasn't there before? Well, if you add a feature, then that's scope. And if that's the case, I may need more people to do that extra feature or features that you're asking me to. So you can see that whatever happens in your project You just have to think of when they ask you to go faster or add more features or reduce the cost, you're going to think of this is triple constraint triangle. If they're touching cost, I must talk about scope and time and etc. So this is important to understand the triple constraint triangle. So in project management, one of the things that gets really confusing is when people talk about effort versus duration. The difference between effort and duration is that effort is just something that's going to take you to complete a task. Duration, on the other hand, is the time it will take you, taking into consideration other factors beyond just the time it will take you to complete. So let's give you an example. If I say this task will take 5 days to complete, now if I was to take the first example, I could work Monday to Friday, that's 5 days at 100%, and I can finish the whole thing in 5 days. If I'm not 100% allocated to the project, I'm only say 50% or 40%, I could work on Monday, Tuesday every week, and then I'll finish it by the third week on Monday. If on the other hand, I'm only 10-20% allocated to the project, so I don't have much time, but I will take 5 weeks every Monday or every Tuesday to finish the task, I will get it done. So the duration is the actual time it will take you to finish. Effort is overall effort that it will take you to finish that particular task. So you need to make sure that when people give you estimates in project management, you need to ask, this is the effort, and duration would be what would be shown in the Microsoft project in the Gantt chart that I talked about. So that's how the project plan shows the duration, which is the actual time it takes to finish, and not the effort. So when we say project methodologies, we're just talking about how would you finish this project using what approach, what methodologies. One of the methodology that we are familiar with is the waterfall. It's traditional waterfall, which is sequential phases of requirements, development, testing, etc. That's waterfall. Recently, we've been working with Agile, which has Scrum, Kanban, that allows you to work on a 2-week sprint, and the work that is carried out is a small piece of the overall project. So you're actually finishing in Agile small pieces of work incrementally towards the final product. Whereas the waterfall, you do all the planning up front and you execute it step by step in the sequential order. So let's talk about these two different project methodologies. So first of all, what is SDLC? SDLC is software development lifecycle. That means it has the requirements phase. You start with the requirements, the scope of the project, you analyze it, you design it, and then you build it, code it, development, and then you test it, and then you deploy it. These are the 5 distinct sequential phases of SDLC. Everything happens in sequence. And the requirements is the most important, because if you don't spend time gathering requirements, clarifying the requirements, and then getting the approval and locking them down is important, because once you do that in waterfall, you will not be able to change unless you put a change request, CR, that we talked about, which might cost you more time and cost. So it is important that you spend more time on the requirements. Everything finishes and then the next phase starts in sequence. On the left, you can see a typical Microsoft project plan that gathers the requirements and puts into activities or the work breakdown structures that has its duration. We talked about duration versus effort. That has a start date, end date, and also links each of those tasks which are dependent on each other. So if you make a small change here, from 3 days to 5 days, everything moves up by 2 more days. Project execution using Agile is a different approach, where we don't spend that much time in the beginning gathering requirements and making sure they are all there, complete and signed off. Where Agile, you have a product backlog, which is always open for scope, for adding more requirements. We call requirements user stories in Agile, in Scrum framework, and those user stories in the product backlog are prioritized the product owner. They would prioritize it. The team would take the top 2, 3, whatever they can in a 2-week sprint, which becomes a sprint backlog. And then they work on those items for 2 weeks. At the end of it, they will demonstrate that to the product owner to make sure that they are on the right path. If not, they get feedback. They incorporate that feedback into the next story or stories, and then they continue this cycle until all the product backlog items are completed. So is it possible to have a traditional waterfall mixed with the agile framework? And the answer is not really, but if you have to, then I would say that the requirements and the analysis will be done waterfall traditional. But when you get to development or the build, you can split the work into sprints, cut them out, and have a kind of the product owner there or stakeholders there to make sure that the build is going according to what they expected. And once you finish with the build or the coding, you can put it back into waterfall again, where you do the testing, make sure everything's tested perfectly, and then you deploy it, and then you put it back into production support. So this is only possible if they insist, but ideally these are two distinct methodologies. If they are either 100% waterfall, stick to waterfall. If they are agile, stick to agile, and don't try to make a hybrid approach. So what's the role of a project manager and how should they manage the project? Well, in a nutshell, these are the high-level duties that a project manager should do. They are in charge of the project. That means making sure the project is on track according to the plan and making sure the team is doing exactly what they said they're going to do in the time frame they had suggested in terms of estimates. They organize and lead the team. They make sure that there are project team meetings, there's a status update to stakeholders, and they manage the stakeholders if they have any questions, etc. The project manager ensures the project stays on track by providing good quality reports and highlighting risks that may come up and highlighting issues that have come up and exactly what they're doing in terms of mitigating those issues. The project manager also plans the work to make sure that they're always looking ahead of the game. So if the project is in planning, they look at the building of the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, to make sure that the environment is set up, everyone has access, etc. They also make sure that the people who need to be working on the project are hired, have been trained, and know exactly what to do, and they can get started on day one. They also make sure that they monitor the progress of the project and again providing reports to the stakeholders and to the team to make sure that they know where exactly they are in the project lifecycle. At the same time, most importantly, they keep the team motivated, making sure that the project team is aware what the overall objective of the project is, how they're doing it, what is the feedback from the stakeholders, etc. So all that is something that the project manager needs to do, is to keep the finger on the pulse of the team to make sure they are motivated and they are fully onboarded, and they know that the project manager has an open door policy, meaning they can approach the project manager as and when needed with anything they may have that they need resolving, and not, bubble up inside and not mention to the team. The other thing to remember is that the team efficiency is always broken down into three things. You always know that there are processes and procedures that you follow, and there are always technology and tools that you apply it on. All these two things are only possible with people, and that's the most challenging part of it. You can always learn the process and procedures. You can always update them, create them. You can also learn the technology, learn the tools. What you cannot do is to say, I understand people, I like working with people. This is the most common statement I heard when I was coaching with the many people, that they always said, I love working with people, that's why I want to be a project manager or a Scrum Master. I always highlight to them that the most challenging part of the PPT is people. You think you know somebody, but you don't know them, because people have moods, they have personal challenges. So one day they could be the most productive team member, other times they might be off sick and the project is in jeopardy. So all these things are important, that you understand the PPT framework, that you can focus on these two, but the most effort is in the people and the people management. So let's talk about risks and issues. The fundamental part of the project management is managing risks and taking care of the issues. So what is a risk? A risk is something that has not happened, it's in the future, and you are just mitigating that. If it happens, what would you do? So let's take an example. If I was booking a outdoor birthday party, there is a risk that it might start raining. And the mitigation plan would be I would I would hire a nearby like a cabin, or I would get some umbrellas so that when the rain does come, we are prepared with umbrellas, etc. So it hasn't happened, it is in the future, and then you're mitigating that if it does happen, which becomes an issue, then I would execute the mitigation plan. On the other hand, when a risk does happen, it becomes an issue. When the issue happens, then you have action plan, which is pretty much what the mitigation plan you suggested, but you're going to now make it in more detail, step by step, how you would resolve this issue. You need to make an idea if this issue is critical, high, medium, or low. So you want to keep an eye out on those critical issues and to make sure that they are taken care of. Otherwise, the project could be jeopardized. You want to give regular updates to stakeholders, because every time you present your report, status report, if you have a status that says yellow, that means cautionary kind of action plan is needed, the project may be derailing, they'll be asking, so what's the issue? And you're going to say, well, we haven't got the server kind of delivered by the vendor as planned, so we are taking care of that. So what are you doing about it? So they're asking you what's the action plan for that issue. So you want to make sure this happens so that the project is kind of completed successfully. If you don't take care of the issues, the project can be in a jeopardy. So we talked about RAID log, and what is a RAID? It's like an Excel spreadsheet with say 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of tabs. Each tab is named as risks, actions, issues, decisions. So you have one kind of Excel spreadsheet or workbook, and you have 4 tabs, each one having these names. This is what we mean by RAID log. Now, there's nothing stopping you having just the risks and issues log, because that's the most important. But having actions, it allows you to say what actions you need to take and what decision did the project make. For example, they decided that they will not have dual screen and they only have single screen, or they decided they're not going to have French, only English. All these decisions needs to be captured and captured somewhere and approved, so that people are aware that these were the decisions made and this is the action item that we took. So just to summarize, the risks, action, issues, decisions is the acronym for RAID. Here's an example of the RAID log. Here you can see that in the actual Excel spreadsheet, you have risks, issues, action, decisions, and the risks kind of tab will look like there's a number of risk number 1, 2, 3, for example, the description of the risk, if it's open, closed, cancelled, whatever, and then the priority of critical or high or low or medium, and then who are the owners and when did it open, and what's the ETA to have that kind of fixed, and what's the mitigation plan. On the other hand, if of an issue, on the issue tab, it'll have an issue number, it will be description for that. If it's open, what's the priority for that issue, who are the owners, and again, what's the progress, what's the issue. So you put here the log of the progress as things progress to close that issue down. Action, document meeting minutes, you need to put that. And for example, for the decisions, you can say the problem was whether we're going to make a dual language or single language, who were the key contacts, what we kind of decided, what were the recommend options, and any approval emails or whatever that you can attach to that. So let's talk about project environments and the testing cycle. There are many environments within project that you need to be aware of, and a lot of times as a project manager, project coordinator, Scrum Master, people don't explain to you exactly what they have in the organization. So you need to ask questions like, there is always going to be a development environment where the developers will do the development and then it'll go into testing. Now, testing, sometimes they have 2 before it goes in production, sometimes they only have 1, or maybe they have 3 here as well. So after development, it needs to go into some kind of end-to-end testing in the system integration, and that is normally done very closely working with the developers. And then once that is kind of addressed, all the issues in the SIT or the IST, so system integration testing or integrated system testing, kind of same thing, but people might call it SIT environment or IST environment. Once they've done all the testing and there are no P1, P2 critical bugs, defects, it goes into user acceptance testing or quality assurance testing, QAT. This is where the user will test. It's the final time they will be testing before it goes into production. So you want to make sure that whatever development has coded, you want to test it. You want to make sure users are happy with it before it goes into production environment. So what happens in development? So they also do such thing as called unit testing. So that means the developers will write a code. They will do quick test on that code to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. For example, the code might say, when the user types in their account number, pull their first name, last name, and their address, for example. So they'll write the code. They'll make sure that that is working, doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And they do this on their local server, local computer. And this is the starting of the first testing phase. The most challenging part of project management is creating and tracking a budget that will show the team and the stakeholders how much money is allocated to the project and how you as a project manager manages that money throughout the project life cycle, so that you don't spend early, so there's no money left towards the end, and you don't want to have so much money left at the end that they're going to say, why did you ask for that much money? So either way, having too much or too little, you are always asked by the project management team or the stakeholders. So let's go through this example where how do you start or how do you create a budget plan for the project? So first of all, you need to understand who are the resources on the project. So yourself, there's a business analyst, a DBA, contractor, developer, contractor, QA. How many resources they tell you need for the team? You need to write their name down, and then you need to find out their rate per hour. And if they give you per hour, you need to convert that to per day. And a day could be 7.5 hours or 8 hours per day. And you want to put that rate here. And then you want to calculate that in a month for a particular resource based on the rate per day. You will calculate their monthly cost, which is the burn down cost from the budget. So in this case, my team that consists of all these people, my monthly cost per month would be 71,000. So that's how much is going to burn every month if all of these people are working on my project at 100%. So assuming 20 days in a month, so that's something you can do, because 30 days in a month is typical, but that does include weekends and some holidays. So in project management, you always take 20 days as a working month. So you do the list of tasks and resources, you estimate the cost, and then you add this up into the budget. At the end of the day, you want to add contingency. Contingency means if like 10% or 20% as a buffer, so that if the money runs out, you can use your contingency funds to continue the project. Most organizations let you have kind of 10%, but ideally I like to do 20% contingency if possible. So if the contingency on a 71,000 at 10% was 7,100, so my total cost for the project would be 78,100. So let's now track the budget and see how the burn rate how the burn rate comes up. So now we have the actual forecast of how much I think I need per month, which is 71,000 a month. And then we're going to have people putting the times in for every month. So you know that that's how much they actually have used the time, and therefore costs should be taken away from the budget fund. And then you adjust the plan if it's less or more. So let's start. My budget was $250,000 at the beginning of the project. Then the first month, as you know, my burn rate was 71,000, so I have 179,000 left. Second month, I have 108,000. By spending another 71,000, I'm down to 108,000. So in the second month, my budget, my overall amount would be 108,000 because another month has gone by and the 71,000 has been kind of taken away from the amount. So now in the third month, I have 37,000 left. Now I need to ask more money because my burn rate is 71,000. So you can ask money here. Otherwise, if you don't, you'll be overdrawn by 34,000. So this is the running balance and this is your burn rate. This is how you manage the project. So obviously, if my project was 2 months long, then I should be fine. But if it went over, then I know that my money won't be enough, and therefore might dip into my contingency, which again in this case won't be enough as well. So sometimes you calculate the budget based on time and material versus fixed contract. So what's the difference between time and material? Time and material is there's no fixed price. So for example, if you have a person come into your house and say, how much would it cost to build my kitchen? They'll say that it's gonna be 5 days or 6 days, depending on materials and all that. So there's no fixed price. So they will do the hours per hour. You'll pay them at the rate that they have agreed, and you continue charging until the job is done. And this is good for small projects, which is kind of clearly defined and you know exactly what's going on. If it's a fixed price contract, that means I don't know how much it's going to cost you to fix my kitchen, but I will give you, say, $100,000 and you need to fix that. If they say, then there's a risk on both parties that you are allocating enough budget and the person who's going to do it need to make sure that they also know the scope is very clear and they have all the questions answered before they commit to a fixed price. So a lot of vendors that we work with have a fixed price contract. That means I'm going to give you $500,000 to do an application for me. If it takes longer than that, that's your problem. We're only going to pay you $500,000. On the other hand, if it's time and material, we allocated almost $500,000, but if it takes longer, then you're going to pay more. It might end up $1 million. So both of these are possible kind of ways of coming up with the budget, but each one has its own pros and cons. So let's look at project status and how you report the project on a weekly basis. So the project status reporting is very critical. All the stakeholders are looking up to you to show them how the project is going. If there's any issues that may impact the timelines or the budget, so you need to highlight that. And all this is done through the project status reporting. The way you report the status of the project is using kind of 3 colors. We use green to say that the project is on track, nothing to worry about, just give a general update and everybody is happy. When you see the project in yellow, then you know that there's something possibly could go wrong and the project may be jeopardized, but nothing to worry about. So people start looking at yellow and saying, what is the problem with that? And when the project is in red, that's when the eyes open and say, oh, what happened here? Because the project in red means the project is derailed and it's going to be impacting its timelines and the budget and everything else that goes with it. So when the project is in red, everybody wants to know what happened and what can they do to bring the project back to green, the plan to green, PTG. So that's what happens when the project is red, and you as a project manager is under a lot of stress when the project starts going away from green into yellow, and you don't want it to be in red because that's when you really have to do extra work, extra hours, explaining what happened and coming up with the mitigation plans and how, and also with the PTG, plan to green, how you intend to bring the project back into green. So it's a lot of stress and it's all to do with people, money, and the scope. So the triple constraint triangle is always the issue, where it could be the people problem, it could be the environment, it could be the vendor not doing their part, but whatever it is, it's always going to impact your project. So as a project manager, you have to take the slack and come up with a plan in terms of how could you bring this project back to green again. The way you bring it back to green again is that you want to make sure that you review the project progress and see, do I need more people? Because sometimes having more people or more money may not resolve the project. So in this case, I'm saying that if I can get extra people, I might be able to bring the project back to green. Also, I want to make sure that I'm able to revise the deliverable due date. That means I'm looking at the time as well. So time and cost is what I'm asking here. I need more people, that means cost, and I need more time because I can't deliver all the project's scope that was initially asked for. So because of that, I have a new due date and the project is re-baselined. So when you re-baseline the project, that means it has a new end deliverable date. You bring it back to green. So the next time when the project is status is shown, it is shown not red but green. Why? Because you have a new like a end date for the project. So this is important to understand, that whenever the project goes into red, you need to start thinking about how do you bring it back to green. So now that we are end of the project management basics, let's see how well you have understood this course by going through some of the questions, and I'll give you some time to answer. So a project has A, no end date, B, start date and end date, or C, start date but no end date. Which one is it? B. It has a start date and an end date. Well done. What is the main purpose of the initiation phase? A. To create a detailed plan for the project. B. To identify the project's purpose, goals, and stakeholders. Or C. To start working on the project tasks. The answer is B. To identify the project's purpose, goals, and stakeholders. What is the main objective of the planning phase? A. To execute the project tasks. B. To close the project. Or C. To develop a detailed plan for the project, including tasks, deadlines, and resources. C. To develop a detailed plan for the project, including tasks, deadlines, and resources. What is the primary focus during the execution phase? A. To track progress and make changes to the plan. B. To start working on the project task and ensure the team has the necessary resources. Or C. To evaluate the project success. B. To start working on the project task and ensure the team has the necessary resources. What is the main goal of the monitoring and controlling phase? A. To break down tasks into smaller components. B. To track progress, review the quality of work, and make any necessary changes to keep the project on track. Or C. To wrap up any remaining tasks and complete documentation. B. To track progress, review the quality of work, and make any necessary changes to keep the project on track. What is the primary objective of the closure phase? A. To create a project charter. B. To start working on the project task. Or C. To wrap up any remaining tasks, complete documentation, and evaluate the project's success. C. To wrap up any remaining tasks, complete documentation, and evaluate the project's success. What are the four main elements of the project? A. Location, resources, duration, and stakeholders. Or B. Scope, time, cost, and quality. Or C. People, technology, goals, and budget. The answer is B. Scope, time, cost, and quality. Which of the following best describes the difference between effort and duration? Effort measures the total cost of a project, while duration measures the amount of time required to complete a project. B. Effort measures the amount of work required to complete a task, while duration measures the actual time it takes to complete the task from start to finish. Or C. Effort measures the number of people involved in a project, while duration measures the amount of time each person spends on the project. The answer is B. It measures the amount of work required to complete a task, while duration measures the actual time it takes to complete the task from start to finish. What are the three key responsibilities of a project manager? A. Designing the product, testing and customer support. B. Sales, marketing and public relations. Or C. Planning and organizing the project, leading and motivating the team, and monitoring the progress. The answer is C. Planning and organizing the project, leading and motivating the team, and monitoring the progress. What is the difference between a risk and an issue in project management? A. Risks are problems that have already occurred, while issues are potential problems that can be identified and planned for in advance. Or B. A risk is potential problem that can be identified and planned for in advance, while an issue is a problem that has already occurred and requires a resolution. Or C, risks are financial and issues are related to a project scope. Answer is B. A risk is a potential problem that can be identified and planned for in advance in the future, while an issue is a problem that has already occurred and requires a resolution. What are the three main steps in creating a project budget? A. Estimating revenue, calculating profits, and determining return on investment. Or B. Listing all tasks and resources needed, estimating the cost for each item, and adding everything up to the total budget. Or C. Prioritizing tasks, assigning resources, and tracking deadlines. The answer is B. Listing all tasks and resources needed, estimating the cost for each item, and adding everything up to get the total budget. Why is project reporting important for stakeholders? Is it A, project reporting is important because it allows stakeholders to compare their projects with competitors? Or is it B, project reporting is important for stakeholders because it keeps them informed about the project's progress, helps them understand how resources are being used, and enables them to provide necessary input and support to ensure the project's success? Or is it C, project reporting is mainly for project manager to monitor the performance of the team members? Project reporting is important for stakeholders because it keeps them informed about the project's progress, helps them understand how resources are being used, and enables them to provide necessary input and support to ensure the project's success. So let's summarize the project management basics videos for you now. So the key takeaways is that a project is a temporary effort with a specific goal or result defined by start and end date and distinct elements such as scope, time and cost and quality. This is the triple constraint triangle. The project has phases which are initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closure. The triple constraint triangle represents a balance between scope, time and cost with quality in the center. Adjustment to one constraint will impact the others. While effort focuses on the work input needed to complete the task, duration looks at the overall time it takes to finish the task, considering factors beyond just the work itself. The project methodologies include traditional waterfall and the agile approaches like Scrum, Kanban, with various frameworks and techniques suited to different project types and industries. So you want to apply what is right for that project and not follow what people want you to do. Because sometimes if it's a traditional waterfall where you are just moving application A to application server A to server B, it might be easier to do a waterfall than agile, because agile is all about feedback. So if you know you're going to move these 10 bricks to over there, then you're going to do waterfall. Why would you do agile and get feedback? A project manager is responsible for planning, organizing, and leading and monitoring the project to ensure it stays on track and achieves its objectives. SDLC, which is Software Development Lifecycle, is a process. These are the phases in software development that consist of various stages from planning to deployment and maintenance. And we talked about these as requirements: analyzing, building, testing, and deployment. These are 5 phases in SDLC. We talked about risk and issues, where risk is something that has not happened yet, whereas issue has happened. And we are managed using RAID, which is the actual overall log, which stands for risks, actions, issues, and decisions. This log helps identify and assess and resolve potential and existing problems. And it could be a Microsoft Excel workbook with the 4 tabs that has risks, actions, issues, and decisions. Creating and tracking project budget is important. Involves estimating costs, planning for unexpected expenses, and monitoring spending to ensure the project stays within the allocated resources. So the project budget says $100,000. It has to come within 10-20% of that, and not less, not more. The project status and reporting involves sharing updates with stakeholders using visual aids like red, green, and yellow. So if the project is in green, everybody's happy. If it was in yellow, people start getting concerned. And if it's in red, the project is in trouble, and you need to bring it back to green using PTG process. So I hope this gave you the basics of project management. Now, it could go on for another 25 videos, another 2-3 days workshop, because project management is deep, and it depends on how much you want to know. So the idea of these videos was to give you a taste of project management, so that as a Scrum Master or somebody, you can get to know the terms and what is involved. And hopefully that from here, if you want to go in more deeper, you will look at other materials available online to enhance your understanding into project management.